Danny Rolen Jr. was by all accounts a good man, a hard worker, and adored by his family.
What was Danny like growing up?
He was pretty active and shy.
And he was funny. He was a practical joker. He loved playing jokes on people, had an awesome laugh.
Danny lived near the lush ranch land of Pottsboro, Texas. He worked with his father, Danny Sr., at a local manufacturing plant.
I was in maintenance department, so I got paged a lot because I run the night shift crews. That's where we got the name Danny Sr. and Danny Jr. Because when you got paged over the intercom, you didn't know who they were paging. I was proud of him. I just wished I had shown him more at that time.
What type of man did Danny become?
A good father. He always took care of his kids.
And that sentiment is echoed by Danny Jr.'s daughter, Kelly.
What are some of your fondest memories that you hold so dear of you and your dad?
I'd have to say laying on the couch every weekend watching TV and playing football.
He played football with you?
Yeah, I was like his tomboy.
Were you Daddy's little girl?
Yes.
But Kelly says those good times were tainted after her dad started dating Amber Ratliff.
What type of relationship did Amber and your father have?
There were times where they would fight a lot and we would just me and my older sister would go to our room, but at first everything looked good, but towards the end, that's when we noticed a lot of things that we didn't like.
Like what?
Well, they just started fighting a lot and she just didn't really care about anything much.
Was Amber good to you?
Yes, she was at first. Towards the end, she really didn't talk to us much.
What did you think of Amber at first?
I didn't trust her. You could tell there was a dark side to her.
So Amber fooled you?
Yes, absolutely. I got close to Amber, very close to Amber, and I did treat her like a daughter.
Danny's younger sister, Tammy, says she and her brother were inseparable until Amber entered the family picture.
You're saying Amber alienated Danny from the family?
Yes. Oh, yeah. She up and moved him out from, he got kicked out of his apartment he lived in for probably over 15 years when they ended up getting together.
Tammy claims the wedge that separated Danny from his family? Addiction.
Was he trying to change his life around?
Yes, he was. He was ready to leave, get away from her, and start over new and get clean. He wanted to leave that night. When he called my dad, he was ready to leave. He had already planned that day to leave that night.
And you talked to him that one last time that you never thought would be the last time?
Yes.
And shortly after Danny's last phone call to Dad, Amber would make a frantic 911 call.
Man, my boyfriend's died in the living and there's blood all over his face.
But that night, Danny and Amber had a house guest, the boy down the street, Tyler Quain.
Had you heard of Tyler before?
I believe I'd heard his name one time before. He was at her son's birthday party out there with him, and I was wondering, why is such a young boy hanging out with you at your house? Supposedly, he was a babysitter for her kids.
It doesn't really make sense why Quain would be at their home that late at night.
Right.
In court documents, Amber claims she took 3 sleeping pills, and early in the morning, Tyler woke her up, covered in blood. Danny's blood. Danny's head was bashed in. He had multiple stab wounds, and his wrists were slit.
Do you see any weapons? Yeah, there's a beer in his hand and there's a gash on his wrist.
And near the body, what could be interpreted as a suicide note scrawled on the back of an ATM receipt. I loved you. Bye.
And Sergeant Wheeler calls me. He says, I got a suicide for you.
Sergeant Chad Butler with the Anna, Texas Police Department was then working for the Grayson County, Texas Sheriff's Office when he got the call to investigate the alleged suicide.
I go up the back steps, through the kitchen into the living room, and that's where Danny Joe Rolen was laying underneath the Christmas tree, underneath a University of Texas blanket. It was orange with a big longhorn on the front. Sarge said it looks like he had cut his wrist. And at this point, I'm seeing a 16-year-old kid, 15-year-old kid. I'm thinking, there's no way possible that a child of this age could do something that's this horrendous looking. It was horrible.
Tyler was right in the thick of the terror, and Butler was told to take the boy home.
So I was about halfway back to the crime scene, and Sergeant Wheeler calls me and goes, "Where's that kid that you just took?" I said, "Well, I dropped him off with his mama like you told me." He says, "Go get him right now. We got to have him. This is a homicide."
At the time, did Quain seem like someone who had done anything wrong when he was in the backseat of your car? You were taking him home?
I mean, he was riding next to me. I thought he was just a witness, if anything, and he said he was asleep.
Butler takes Tyler to sheriff's headquarters and tests his clothes for blood.
We used a chemical that's called Blue Star. You mix it up with distilled water, you spray it on there. It's like luminol, except it glows blue. There was blue spots up and down these little jogging pants that he had on.
The glow from the blood literally lit up the room.
Yes.
And this was supposed to be a suicide.
Yes. So it was stacking up pretty quick that this was not what we thought we were looking at.
Then the CSI team checks the fingerprints on the so-called suicide note and the beer bottle.
And it turned out that Tyler Quain's fingerprints were on the note. And the beer bottle had his fingerprints on it.
So Quain is looking more and more suspicious all along as you go.
Yes, ma'am.
So he's not this 15-year-old kid you thought was just there during a suicide. He's
suspect, definitely.
Danny's body was taken to the medical examiner, and the autopsy confirmed Butler's suspicions.
The medical examiner's report indicated he had been stabbed approximately 16 to 17 times and had suffered blunt force trauma wounds to the head, which the medical examiner believed were caused by a hammer.
A hammer, multiple stab wounds. What kind of suicide is this? It just didn't make sense. Danny Rolen Jr.'s family didn't buy the claim that he committed suicide.
When investigators first thought it was a suicide, did you believe that?
No. Not my son. There was no way.
Danny wouldn't have taken his own life.
No.
You know better than that.
I know that without a doubt because he loves his family.
Family like daughter Kelly.
I was 12, and when they told me, I couldn't believe it. Like, I thought, how? How would he, how?
Danny's younger sister, Tammy, says she didn't believe the suicide claim for 1 second.
Investigators first thought your brother took his own life.
How? How can someone that beats themselves in the head with a hammer umpteen times stab themselves in the back?
And investigators quickly realized the suicide story is just that, a story.
This was clearly a staged scene.
This was clearly made to look like Danny Rolen committed suicide.
It was clearly an attempt, but it did not fool investigators, nor the medical examiner, nor the DA's office.
You saw through it.
Yes, ma'am.
The autopsy states Danny died as the result of multiple sharp force injuries and blunt force head injuries. The medical examiner says the manner of death is homicide. So who staged the scene? Investigators now hone in on the teenager who claims he discovered Danny's bloody body.
Can you go ahead and state your full name, please? Preston Allen Quain.
Quain goes by Tyler. He's in the back seat of a Grayson County, Texas sheriff's car. A detective records an audio interview with him to see what he claims led up to Danny's death.
Last night, I was watching the kids for a little bit, and they went and got some cocaine. And
Who's they?
Yeah, her and Danny.
And name her by name?
Amber Ratliff.
Amber Ratliff was Danny's girlfriend. Quain claims she and Danny had a horrible argument that night.
All I hear was, "Get the out. I don't want you here no more."
And who was saying that?
Amber was saying
Amber's
that.
saying that,
to
okay,
Danny.
to Danny.
And I went in there and I was like, "Y'all calm down." And Danny yelled out, "You want me out of here? You're gonna regret this."
So now, Anna, Texas Police Sergeant Chad Butler, who was with the sheriff's office at the time, takes the boy into headquarters.
All right. You doing okay today?
Where a detective conducts a formal interrogation.
What time did you think you woke up?
I didn't. Right when I lay down, I felt it.
Right when you lay down at 5 o'clock, you felt what?
I lay down and I see his arm, and I thought he just passed out, because he was drunk.
How many beers do you think you had?
I had one and neighbor had one, so that's 10.
You think he had 10 beers?
No, I know he had 10 beers.
But as detectives will soon learn, that was a lie. When the toxicology results come back, it will show Danny had no alcohol in his system at the time of his death. So if Danny wasn't drinking, someone had to have placed the beer bottle into his hand.
So at 5 o'clock, you lay down and you feel wetness on your right arm, on your top of your left hand, on your right jaw, and you smell this odor.
Yeah, and I was getting soaked, and I went like this, and it just felt gooey. And I got up, and I saw his arm. He was finally out like this. He was like this, and his right arm, and I saw a cut right here.
Was he laying on his back or on his side?
So,
Could that be another lie? When investigators first entered the house, they saw Danny lying on his back.
You never put your shoes on. You had your shoes off early that evening, and you never put them on that night.
nope.
You never had your shoes on.
They had my
Walking in-
socks, I had blood on my socks.
You never walked into the kitchen with blood on your shoes.
Nope.
Another lie. Photos taken that morning show Quain's shoes covered in blood. The CSI team marked off places on the kitchen floor where they found blood tracks.
I probably talked to him for 3 or 4 hours. Every time he told the story, there was another little piece that was laid out there on the table. Every time somebody talked to him, the story kept changing. It was never consistently the same. Maybe the overall idea of it, but there was always a little detail that was either pulled or added to.
So from the start, you knew he had to be lying if the story changed over and over and over again.
We definitely started to suspect that based on what he was saying to us.
Quain doesn't know it yet, but detectives have found his prints all over the alleged suicide note.
You had a lot of red flags.
A lot. There was a lot of, we need to slow down, take this step by step, and know exactly what we're doing.
One of those steps was to take a closer look at the slashes on Danny Jr.'s wrists. Turns out they are superficial wounds.
So the superficial wounds to the wrist were made to look like he cut himself?
That's correct. The medical examiner was also able to determine that those lacerations were not sufficient enough to slice any arteries or veins, therefore to cause any substantial bleeding. There was not a lot of bleeding from those wounds, so they were indications that those wounds had been caused post-mortem or after death.
It's all starting to add up. The phony cuts on the wrist, the beer bottle planted in the hand, the suicide note. Only 2 people could have staged the crime, and detectives narrow it down to 1.
Did you have any problem with believing that Quain did this solely and that Amber was in no way involved?
In the beginning of the investigation, we suspected that maybe Amber was involved, but the investigation shows that's not the case. No evidence that would show she's part of the crime.
When officers arrived, they observed no blood on Amber, so that was a first indication that perhaps Amber was not involved in the murder.
Quain is arrested and charged with murder. Investigators get a stunning piece of evidence that will complete the puzzle.
Perhaps most importantly was a jailhouse recorded phone call to his grandmother where Quain essentially admitted to the murder himself.
Crime Watch Daily has obtained that recorded call.
I mean, I'm guilty for killing him, but I'm innocent in self-defense.
But he was trying to get on you?
Yeah. I didn't mean to hit him that many times. Like, he looked like a cartoon when I was hitting him.
So you feel that speaking honestly with his grandmother, he confessed to the killing?
I have no doubt about it.
The horrible reality of Danny Rolen Jr.'s brutal death finally hit home for his dad the moment he saw his son in the funeral home.
That's one of the hardest things I did. Because I didn't believe he was gone until then.
That was the reality sinking in when you saw your son.
Investigators in North Texas are 100% convinced this was no suicide. It was murder.
Danny Rolen died from homicidal force, that he had been stabbed approximately 16 to 17 times and had suffered blunt force trauma wounds to the head.
And the only suspect? The babysitter, 16-year-old Tyler Quain.
Considering Quain was only 16 years old at the time, do you think that he understood or knew what he was carrying out? Did he plan to do this? Was it a spur-of-the-moment thing?
I don't think anyone that would commit a crime of this nature, the way this crime scene was staged, had put any forethought into it. I think this was a spur-of-the-moment, last-minute, irrational thought.
The Grayson County grand jury indicted Quain for murder. Prosecutor Brett Smith tried him as an adult. At the trial, Danny's girlfriend Amber Ratliff testified.
We called Amber as a witness in our trial with the understanding that she could say anything she wanted when she got on the stand, and I asked her point blank, did she kill Danny Rolen? And she denied it under oath.
And there was never any evidence Amber had anything to do with the murder or staging the scene. Could Amber have simply been the motive for the murder?
Just my pure speculation is that Preston Quain probably had some kind of romantic affinity, desire for Amber, and felt like if he could get rid of Danny, maybe he would have an opportunity.
The evidence against Quain is so overwhelming, the jury quickly returns a verdict.
The day before he turned 17, he was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 99 years.
Was the death penalty ever on the table?
It was not in this case. This was not a death penalty case.
99 years, his appeals exhausted. Quain will spend the rest of his life in Texas State Prison. And now, in this Crime Watch Daily exclusive, he sits down with us for his first ever TV interview.
What happened on that day?
Well, it was a regular school day. I was on probation. I wasn't supposed to be drinking or doing any drugs, but I ended up snorting cocaine and drinking.
Look closely. Quain has a teardrop tattoo under his right eye, a prison symbol that signifies the inmate is a murderer.
Does the tear on your eye represent Danny Rolen and the life that was lost?
It just, to me, it's a permanent sadness.
Quain claims things got out of hand when an argument between Danny and Amber escalated and he jumped in.
As Amber went into the bedroom, she started slamming the door, but he caught it. He stuck his arm in there, tried to get in, pushed. She wouldn't let him in. So he ended up grabbing her hair, pulled her out, and then that's when I intervened and tried to get in between it.
And what happened next?
Well, he wouldn't let go of her, so I intervened again, and he turned on me and he grabbed me by my throat. I just remember my eyes were going black, so I put my hands on the counter. That knife that was on the counter right there. My hand ended up landing on it, and he wouldn't let go. So that's when I stabbed him one time. But he still wouldn't let go. I remember I stabbed him one more time.
Did that blood rain down on you with you under him?
There was blood everywhere. Just flat out killing. It was just spur of the moment, gone too far as I stabbed him. But not just outright out of hatred or anything like that. I was just trying to get him off of me.
Quain says that's when he staged the scene to make it look like a suicide.
It was hours after he had already been dead, so he was stiff. That's the only reason why he had those stab wounds. Because every time I tried to put the knife in him, his body was too tough, so it wouldn't go through.
And you did the slices on his wrist?
Yes.
Who planted the note?
I wrote the note.
When Detective Butler brought you home and dropped you off, did you think you'd gotten away with murder?
No, not murder. Like I said, I was on probation. It was only a matter of time before they came and got me for curfew.
Why did you change your story so many times with law enforcement?
I wasn't ready to admit it. I wasn't a man back then. I wasn't grown. I was immature. I was a liar. I got myself in this mess by all the stories that I told and evidence that was left, hiding the knives, leaving my fingerprints. I did all that.
Did you ever have a sexual relationship with Amber?
No.
You have remorse for what happened with Danny?
Oh, yeah. Every day.
You said, remember during the victim impact statement, and I told y'all I was sorry. I wasn't sorry for killing him, I was sorry for y'all's loss, quote. What did you mean by that?
Well, a couple of their Danny's family got up and made the victim impact statements, and it hit me. I mean, I'm still alive, but their loved one is dead.
If you had anything to say to the family and to the daughters without a father and in the rough time that they've had with this, what, if anything, do you have to say to the Rolen family?
I'm terribly sorry. I really am. If I could change it, I would. I didn't intend to hurt Danny. I didn't intend to kill Danny. It was all just happened so fast. I'm sorry. I really am.
Did you want to take the stand?
Yeah, but I didn't want to dig myself in a deeper hole.
If you had taken the stand in your trial, what would you have said?
Exactly what happened. From what happened before and what happened to the point to where me and Danny got into it. I stabbed him. I stabbed him twice. And I regret it.
Do you deserve 99 years?
Well, because of my stupid actions, a life was lost. I don't think I should have the say of what my sentence should be. I mean, I'm alive. I mean, Danny's gone.
If you had one last thing that you could say to Danny and one last moment to share with him, what would that be like? What would you do? How would you use it? What would you say to Danny?
I'd hold him in my arms and tell him how much I love him. And I didn't want him to leave me. Even though that I knew that he was because of how bad he was hurting her.
What do you miss most about Danny?
Our friendship. It didn't matter how bad things were. Danny Joe always had the sweetest laugh. You know, if you were down or you were sad or you were mad, it didn't matter. You know, he had that laugh about him. Everybody loved to see Danny Joe come.
In all, what has this left you with?
It has made all of us a totally different people. There's no getting back what we've lost.
Quain's lawyers appealed his sentence, arguing that the trial judge should have disqualified a juror who personally knew some of the witnesses. That appeal was denied. He'll not be eligible for parole until 2038.